All right, so here's my vice. Sometimes I'm tone deaf, painfully type A, emotionally stupid. Sometimes I just get so caught up in the logistics of life that I completely misread the emotional situation. So, for example, in my early 20s, two teenage friends confided in me that they're pregnant, and they are clearly scared shitless. And what's the first thing I say? Wow, diapers are expensive. Like, who says that? A couple of years later, I'm a naturalist at a science camp, and this little guy who's super excited and eager because he wants to show me this amazing leaf. It's really just a leaf. Now, I'm juggling 15 different things, but I stop and I take his leaf and I say, wow, cool leaf. And then not thinking, I just drop it right on the ground. Now, I realize my mistake and I apologize, but what a dick move. I mean, sadly, there's more examples, but you get the idea. I mean, sometimes I just get so distracted by tasks and lists and responsibilities that I completely miss the human story. So, it's 5 years ago, and I'm leading a group of volunteers who pick backyard fruit and then donate it to groups and individuals in need. I mean, we get permission, we don't steal it. And on this one occasion, our job is to harvest these two massive plum trees. And I gotta greet the volunteers and make sure people sign waivers and check the quality of the fruit and run a little safety orientation. I mean, this is perfect for my type A brain. And then I see her coming, Leny. Now, Leny is short for Magdalena, and she's in her mid-80s, and she owns these trees in this house, and she's come out to check on us. So the day's getting kind of warm, and she's worried that the volunteers are going to get overheated and dehydrated. So she wants to bring us refreshments and snacks, and then she starts to tell us about the trees and their history and the different varieties and how they've been grafted. And all my type A impatient brain can think, I mean, she's being like the sweetest person in the universe, is that we have so much to do and we just don't have time for Leny. Now, I'm not a complete jackass. I mean, I don't give her the bum's rush. I thank her graciously, but I convince her that I don't want her to go to all that trouble. I think she's okay with that. Well, we wrap up the harvest, and all the volunteers go home, and I can finally take a breath. I can relax. And I think, I should probably go check in with Leny, thank her again, say goodbye. So I go up to her door, and we're chit-chatting, and I say, Leny, I'm a huge fan of accents, but I can't quite place yours. Can I ask you where it's from? And she says, oh, well, I grew up in a little town in Holland outside of Amsterdam. And I moved to California in 1950 in my late teens to visit, to come join family who were already here. And she tells me about how she went to university and how she became a social worker. So on my way home, I start to do the math, and I realize that Leny must have lived through World War II in the Netherlands. And I start to imagine the life of a little girl surrounded by such pain and chaos. It's pretty heavy stuff. Well, I return a couple of days later because I have to give her her donation receipt. And as I walk up to her front door, I notice something that I hadn't seen before. Affixed to her door jamb is a small decorative talisman about the size of my index finger. And when I ask her about it, she explains to me that it's a mezuzah, a traditional Jewish case that contains hand-scribed sacred verses from the Torah written in Hebrew. And as she tells me how it serves as a daily reminder of her faith and her heritage, I'm overcome with this complex mix of sadness, compassion, anger, and admiration because I'm realizing that my new friend Leny is a Holocaust survivor. So she tells me that in 1942, when she was 11 years old, her family was forced into hiding from the Nazis. Now, because there wasn't room for all four of them, they all had to be in separate locations. 3 years later, when the country was finally liberated, she had survived, and so had her parents. But her little brother had been discovered, taken away by the Nazis to a death camp and murdered. And her mother, unable to cope with this unimaginable grief, took her own life just a few years later. And how did Leny respond to this, respond to being hunted by Nazis? How did she respond to having her brother murdered and her family shattered by Nazis? She responded by living a life of courage, compassion, and charity. That's how she responded. And standing there with her, I'm deeply moved. I'm changed. So I just saw Leny last week. I had coffee with her. And she was super excited that I might get a chance to tell this story. And she is such a beautiful reminder to me that everyone has a story. Though sometimes those stories may be hidden away out of view, much like the sacred verses in a mezuzah. But I know now that if I just slow down and I listen carefully, well, I will definitely be ready to hear the next amazing story that comes my way. Thank you.